What is up? Now, if you know who I am and know about the videos I post some political stuff. I've been in politics for a long time. I did online school, so I watched a lot of Congress and city hall meetings, especially locally and federally. So I know a lot. I would say a lot. Not as, I don't know a lot about everything. But I know a good amount about some topics. And what I'm noticing is people are talking about immigration. People are talking about, political institutions such as banks. People are talking about, homelessness, military. I mean, just all these topics. And they're talking about how to fix them. And I don't hear very many people talk about what I believe to be one of the biggest problems out there today. A lot of people don't know about an institution, a private institution called the Federal Reserve. As you can see on my screen, that's the Federal Reserve Bank. Now I ask you, what is the Federal Reserve? Do you even know? Most people don't. We're not taught about the Federal Reserve. We don't know about their past and what they've done, what they've funded, how their role in America's financial world works. So what I'm going to do, if you can bear with me, I'm going to show you a few things, okay? I'm going to show you how the financial system works. I'm going to show you, that's just in America. I'm going to show you how the Federal Reserve is involved. And I'm going to show you how they're affecting us. They're like a virus. I'm going to also show you political figures who speak out against the Federal Reserve and what they say. And you're going to see the media bias and how they try to cover, I don't know if I should say cover, but how they try to deflect what the claims are about the Federal Reserve and how they are basically screwing up our nation. So now mind, this is going to be political stuff. This is going to be financial stuff. So if you can't bear that, if you are bored of that, if you're just not curious, just leave. There's no point. If you're a person that truly wants to know what is causing a lot of the problems in our nation, stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of information. So I hope you're ready. Here we go. Yes, some of these are going to be videos, they're going to be reactions. So let's start with this guy. This video is going to tell you how the world economy works here. It's pretty funny.
Time now for John Clark and Brian Doyle.
Sorry for the quality,
but a few reflections on Europe's financial woes.
Your name is Roger, yes?
Roger.
Ah, that's your name.
Roger.
Good. And what do you do, Roger?
I'm a financial consultant.
Ah, financial consultant, eh?
Roger,
yeah,
yes.
Terrific. And Roger, how's business at the moment?
Not bad, thank you. Been a bit quiet lately.
How do you mean lately?
Since the war, been a bit quiet.
Fair enough. Okay, Roger, your special subject tonight is the economies of the European community. Your time starts now. Best of luck.
Thank you.
How much does Greece owe, Roger?
$367 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Mostly to the other European economies.
Correct. How much does Ireland owe?
$865 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Other European economies, mostly.
Correct. How much do Spain and Italy owe?
$1 trillion each.
Correct. Who to?
Mainly France, Britain and Germany.
Correct. And how are Germany, France and Britain going, Roger?
Well, they're struggling a bit, aren't they?
Correct. Why?
Because they've lent all these vast amounts of money to other European economies that can't possibly pay them back.
Correct. So what are they going to do?
They're going to have to bail them out.
Correct. Where are they getting the money to do that, Roger?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
How much does Portugal owe?
Hang on a minute. What was the answer to that earlier question?
Just keep answering the questions, Roger. Where is Portugal going to get the money it owes to Germany if Germany can't get back the money that it lent to Italy?
Just a minute. What was the answer to the previous question? The question was, how can broke economies lend money to other broke economies who haven't got any money because they can't pay back the money the broke economy lent to the other broke economy and shouldn't have lent it to them in the first place because the broke economy can't pay it back?
You're wasting very valuable time, Roger. How much money does Spain owe to Italy?
$41 billion, but where are they going to get it?
Correct. What does Italy owe to Spain?
27 billion, but they haven't got it. They're broke.
Correct. How can they pay each other if neither of them has any money?
They're going to get a bailout, aren't they?
Correct. And where's the money coming from for the bailout?
That's what I'm asking you.
Correct. Why are people selling the European currency and buying the US dollar?
Because the US economy is so much stronger than the European economy.
Correct. Why is that, Roger?
Because it's owned by China.
Correct. And very well done. And after that round, you've lost $1 million.
I've lost $1 million. I thought you said well done.
Yes, well done. You've only lost $1 million. That's an extraordinary performance,
I've
Roger.
only lost $1 million.
Very well done.
And that's quite good, is it?
Oh, it's excellent.
Sell everything immediately. Quickly.
Did you hear what he said?
Well done. And after that round, you've lost. Correct. And correct. Why?
The European economy.
Correct. Why is that, Roger?
Because it's owned by China.
Correct.
Like, do you hear that? Ultimately, the American economy is owned by China. If you look up, you'll see China has actually taken land. Pretty sure government land. People are selling off. China's actually buying up cities. Rumor has it they just bought up Hollywood. So we're in debt so much that we'll actually give really good deals or we'll trade things to lower our debt. But the debt scheme, it's kind of like if you just think of your own personal debt. If you get in debt, you have an interest rate. So even if you're paying, if you throw off a good chunk of that money, like the interest rate's going to still go. Like China's smart. They got us trapped. And that's where I would say like Trump is actually battling with China. Like there's a problem with China right now. So, okay. I'm trying to think of which one I want to show you first. Let's do Ron Paul. Let's listen. This is the one I was talking about with the media and how they try to duck out with what Ron Paul is saying.
Our number one economic issue is jobs. If everybody's employed or lots of people are employed, a lot of these problems go away because you're not supporting people. People are paying taxes. Your fellow congressmen are not helping the situation, and you don't trust the Fed. So what's the fix?
Well, they haven't done their job, and they're supposed to have full employment or take care of unemployment, and they've done a lousy job, so I don't know why we can trust them to do something that, quite frankly, they're incapable of doing. They can't practice central economic planning through management of money and credit, and I think we're seeing the results. They can create a bubble, and they can create times that look good, but they're artificial, they're distorted, there's malinvestment, and you do have inflation now that people don't admit to. And you said that I don't want the Fed to fix the economy. I want to fix the economy, but we could fix the economy if we had not had the Fed trying to manage the economy for a long time.
Now, if the Fed were to get out of the way, what would that lead to? What would happen? When you say that assets are mispriced and interest rates are too low,
right.
What would the world look like and how would it happen?
Well, it can't happen overnight, and that isn't my position. I want to transition away from it, but I would legalize competition. If people get very disgusted with the dollar and the financial system, and just look at what the dollar is doing right now, I mean, these recent announcements just devaluing the dollar. But we ought to have the right to practice free market economics and follow the Constitution, allow gold and silver to be legal tender rather than putting people in jail if they want to do that. If you want to look at what it might be like without a Federal Reserve, look to the latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, and that is the period of time where we had the most economic.
So let me ask you this,
ever.
though. I hear you, but there's so much that was so different about the latter part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. Most people can't relate to that. So is there?
Well, they should. They should work on it.
Congressman, you're asking me to relate to a place where I didn't have a BlackBerry and we didn't have the internet.
But you can read.
Didn't have airplanes.
You can read history.
I'm unconvinced about how I'm going to. We didn't have proper plumbing. So let's talk about. Is there a contemporary example of a place that does not have that sort of monetary involvement, central bank involvement that works better? Is there a place? Is there such a?
Well, no, but I think your question is a crucial question, and it also explains why this is a worldwide global phenomenon and why the whole world is engulfed in a situation that is very difficult because we have used the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. They put it in the bank as if it's gold. They still trust the dollar, allow us to print a lot of money, and believing that you can get out of this trouble with debt and spending and all the problems we have by just printing more money.
The Fed was trying to fix things in the economy. You say that they're not an effective tool to do that, but they're trying to increase unemployment. Congress isn't really helping on that front. Do you believe Congress could have a bigger role in supporting and growing employment in this country?
Oh, absolutely. Congress is a culprit, and they're allied with the Fed because the Congress is always too involved. Too much regulations, too much taxes, too much spending. But the spending wouldn't occur if you didn't have the Fed, because the members of Congress are politicians, and they spend money and they won't cut because they're afraid they'll lose the next election. But if you have the Fed standing ready, they are the moral hazard because they're always ready to buy the debt. So there's no incentive under these circumstances for a politician to spend less. So if they want to be run the American empire around the world, no reason to back off for economic reasons. If you want the welfare state forever, no reason to back off until the collapse comes. So I'm trying to come back to a sane policy and try to prevent the collapse of the dollar.
Let me ask you this. You've refused to fully endorse Mitt Romney. He says, by the way, he supports an audit of the Fed. He says he wouldn't reappoint Ben Bernanke as Fed chairman. He's criticized the latest round of Fed stimulus, QE3. Is there something Mitt Romney could do to get your support?
Probably not at this stage, because I'm concerned as much about the foreign policy as domestic policy and monetary policy. But I feel good that he and I have had discussions on the Fed, and he has made some statements, and he supports, this position.
Ron Paul is probably the realest president. If you want to talk about, like, forefathers, here's the thing. I always tell people, if you want... Here, let me get this out of the way. People always talk about capitalism, right? Capitalism. That's what's ruining the world. What people don't understand is we haven't seen true capitalism. Okay? The way the forefathers set it up was the perfect... I shouldn't say perfect. There's probably some bads in there. Or not bads, but like some things that could have been fine-tuned. But it was damn near perfect. They set it up right. And what happened is, since we have a democracy can be dangerous to a nation. I'm just going to throw that out there. And some people are going to be like, T-Bray, what? Democracy, bro, it's the power of the people. Well, here's the thing. Mob rules with democracy. So, honestly, if the people were brainwashed or if the people were misguided or ill-informed, they could vote for the wrong things. That's what I'm seeing with a lot of this with the Paris Agreement. A lot of this with these socialism policies. Like, there are some major arguments that need to take place because there's a lack of information that's out there that people think it's just the cure for all. When really what the forefathers built was a system that was self-balancing. But the problem is, and this is where they went wrong, is they didn't put in as much safeguards. So basically firewalls. So now we have like places like the Federal Reserve that are in charge of our currency, and we'll get to what the forefathers gave us warnings about. This is why I'm making this very apparent. You had European rulers, banks, those guys got in and started taking over. And now you have China that's taken over our economy. These are major problems. And the reason why I'm going to say, if this wasn't the case, America would be better off. We'd be growing, you think we're growing fast now? Like, the technology is getting crazy, in the matter of so many years, it's only getting faster and faster. The problem I see is that we have strangled the nation. That's why you see homelessness. That's why when you have these shitty people in power, that's why you see these ridiculous wars. That's why you see vets not being taken care of. It's crony capitalism. It's not true capitalism, guys. It's crony capitalism. This is why when Trump comes in and says drain the swamp, he means get the people that are in power that are corrupt out. And for some reason, the people that are anti-Trump think that the swamp is just all rich people. So if they criticize him saying, well, you said you drained the swamp, but then you put the CEO of blah, blah, blah in. Well, the CEO could be one of the smartest. I mean, he runs a company, it makes a lot of money, and he has to save money because the private industry is a little different from, like a federal agency or a state agency. A private industry, they have to make things work. If they mess up, they could collapse their whole business unless they get a bailout from the government, right? So, I mean, shit, Tesla did. Tesla got a bailout. He paid it back too, real quick. But that doesn't even mean that's a bad thing, okay? The bad thing is our governments and corporations working behind the scenes in private meetings to push special bills to monopolize the market, to drown out competition. That's called a monopoly. That's controlling the board. It's called a monopoly. So here, I'm gonna get off of this. Let's watch some more. I got some good stuff here. So there's that. Now, JFK, this guy talked about the Federal Reserve. One of his best speeches calls out a lot of the corruption within our government. The ones that are behind the scenes, behind the curtains that you don't see. Right? So this was one of his speeches. This isn't even the full speech. It's 20 minutes long, and I didn't want to put you guys through that. There's a lot of people that just come in, want quick information, quick facts, quick video. Within 5 minutes, boom, they're done. This is going to be a little longer, guys. It's going to be a little longer, but it's okay. You can bear with me. So here's a shorter version. I want you to listen to what he's saying. Remember, people back then were a little more intelligent. So you just got to really listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
What we're battling
and
right
no
now.
official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion.
Those are very powerful words, right? And I'm going to play devil's advocate. You know how he said that criticizing from the media is a good thing? And that censorship should never take place, and they won't do that? So there's going to be people that are going to say, well, that's what Trump's doing. They're criticizing him, and he is censoring them or calling for censorship. But the thing, like, this is how crazy that manipulation is. All Trump's doing is criticizing the media. That's it. He hasn't censored them. What JFK is talking about there is that the media can criticize government officials. Government officials just can't censor. Trump isn't doing that. He's criticizing back. It's fair game. It's fair. I mean, and honestly, if you talk about these reports, you know, CNN themselves have been caught lying, caught putting out fake stories that are unproven, very biased. They have had to retract. They've had to put out public apologies. And they've also fired editors. You guys, like, that needs to be called out. Because when Trump, like, the thing that's funny is when Jim Acosta talks about how Trump said that CNN is the enemy of the people. If you have your news agencies lying to you, giving you fake information, making you think a certain way, that can affect, let's say, elections. They put out fake stories, you're gonna vote for the opposite person. Not on the grounds of truth, on the grounds of misinformation. That is a threat to America. That is an enemy of the people. Like, what Trump is saying is not wrong. Like, it's not wrong. I'm sorry, but that's, if you can fight me tooth and nail, it's not wrong. That is truth. The media has lied to us consistently throughout time. And I'm not going to say Fox News is better. I'm not going to jump that ride. I listen to independent news. I do my own research. Just like what I'm doing right now. This is what people should be doing. But either their lives are too busy, they're either too lazy, or they just simply don't care. Which I can understand. That's why I do what I do. So I can help you. Now, you can take whatever I say. And if you want to look into it more, you can, and I encourage it. I encourage it. But the Federal Reserve is the worst thing that we could have right now. It's horrible. So, now people want to say, well, Obama was the answer. He was the cure. I have my own opinion. And I want you to watch this. It's 3 minutes long, guys.
On March 15th, a carefully crafted corporate fraud will be exposed, and a vicious hoax will be revealed to the people of the world.
Contrary to the rumors that you've heard, I was not born in a manger. I was actually born on Krypton and sent here to save the planet Earth. We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set.
I'll turn it down a little bit.
Everybody somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25 will serve 3 months of basic training.
We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong. Yes, we can.
Obama's healthcare plan will include coverage of all essential medical services. Yes, we can.
Obama is a cruel hoax. He works for Wall Street. He's an agent of finance capital.
Where did you come up with the number $700 billion? Here's the Treasury spokeswoman's quote. It's not based on any particular data point. We just really wanted to come up with a really big number.
To Democrats and Republicans who've opposed this plan, I say, step up to the plate.
A few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no.
Secretary Henry Paulson is no George Washington.
I don't think anyone questions, Mr. Kashkari, that you're working hard. Our question is who you're working for.
Obama pledged that he would resume the Security and Prosperity Partnership talks between Mexico and Canada that President Bush initiated.
The old boss is starting to look a lot like the new boss.
Robert Gates is going to remain on the job as Defense Secretary for at least a year.
Plenty of sources knew about this meeting, told us and others that it was at Hillary Clinton's house, but clearly it wasn't.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
We see you causing a depression so you can blow out the economy and consolidate it and bankrupt it. We know that you are enemies of free humanity, and we are here standing against your tyranny.
Say what you want about Alex Jones. Like, the dude's like, he exposed a lot of shit. If you don't know about the Bohemian Grove, that dude snuck in there. That's where all the rich world leaders freaking, this is where you talk about like the Skull and Bones, that weird fraternity or whatever that shit is, with some of these presidents, like Bush and his family. Like, Bohemian Grove is fucking creepy. Gotta check that out. It's creepy shit. Anyway, so here's more about Ron Paul just calling out the Federal Reserve, basically saying like, you guys are inflating our currency. You guys do whatever the fuck you want. You raise the interest rates. Like, you guys dictate what our economy is doing, which is a problem. And here's the funny thing. They were raising the interest rate even more than they did under Obama. Because what they did is they tried to get Obama's economy a little better. They actually helped him. Okay, so they didn't push as much for higher interest rates. Now, what's funny, though, is when Trump came in, remember, this economy's booming, and they all want to give it to they all want to say Obama. I'm telling you, these guys had a lot to do with it. Now, here's the thing. They started raising the interest rates even more with Trump. And his economy's still booming like crazy. If these guys haven't got into it, I wouldn't even tell you how crazy the stock market or whatever, the whole economy would be. But the thing that's different between Obama and Trump, Obama favored, when they say he's a Wall Street crony, he favored certain people on Wall Street. And I'll be the devil's advocate again. People will be like, well, Trump cut the tax for the rich. Oh, yes, partially, yes. But what he did is he made it even for everyone. It wasn't, what Obama did was he favored certain people. He said, oh, okay, well, you guys and you guys and you guys, since you're going to be giving me some money on the side, I'll give you guys a tax cut. Like AT&T. AT&T didn't pay taxes for like 8 years under Obama. So now here's the thing. Trump, what he did is he put in a plan that treated everyone the same. If you make X amount and over, you get a tax cut of this. If you make this much, you get a tax cut of this. If you make this much, you get a tax cut of that. That's how it's supposed to be. You don't favor. That's creating the monopoly I told you about. Obama was creating a monopoly with companies. Trump is not doing that. Trump is totally different. Yet you can look at it like, well, he's benefiting the rich. Kinda. I mean, yes, but at the same time, he's treating everyone the same. They all fall under a bracket. That's much better than what Obama was doing. If you don't see that, sorry. That's all you. So that's basically, this is him talking about how they raise shit. Now, here's where it gets juicy, guys. How long have I been recording for? Does it say? No. I'm trying to make this a legitimate video. This is where it gets juicy, you guys. Like, you want to know about crazy shit? Here we go. Like, we are just starting. We are literally just starting. So, let's get out of here. All right. I hope you guys are ready. And it's not going to be the best quality, okay? The real truth of the matter is that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. This is Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1933, bro. This shit's been going on for a long time, guys. This is, if you want to cure all the problems, trust me, I'm actually pretty liberal. I just have a lot of conservative views. I respect the forefathers. I know what they were trying to do. I know what they did, and I know who took it over. So if you really want to fix the issues that we are facing today, just watch.
1775. The American Revolutionary War began as the American colonies sought to detach from England and its oppressive monarchy. Though many reasons are cited for the revolution, one in particular sticks out as the prime cause: that King George III of England outlawed the interest-free, independent currency the colonies were producing and using for themselves, in turn forcing them to borrow money from the Central Bank of England at interest, immediately putting the colonies into debt. And
a lot of people don't even know that. The colonies over here made their own currency and were giving out interest-free loans. And business is booming. That's how America was taking off. America was taking off because people that had money would loan money to help people out, right? And things were going crazy. King George did not like that, and he sent the British military. That's what started a lot of it. The colonies said, no, we don't want to be in debt. That's what the whole problem is with the financial. They'll get into the details of how this actually calculates out. But if you're loaning money at interest, you're creating debt out of thin air. Where's that money coming from? It has to come from more debt. Like, it's crazy. It's a trap. It's literally a trap. This is what slavery is called, guys. Like, a lot of people want to talk about freedom here. We're not really free. We are slaves.
As Benjamin Franklin later wrote, the refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. In 1783, America won its independence from England. However, its battle against the central bank concept and the corrupt, greed-filled men associated with it had just begun. So what is a central bank? A central bank is an institution that produces the currency of an entire nation. Based on historical precedent, two specific powers are inherent in central banking practice: the control of interest rates and the control of the money supply, or inflation. The central bank does not simply supply a government's economy with money, it loans it to them at interest. Then, through the use of increasing and decreasing the supply of money, the central bank regulates the value of the currency being issued. It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to figure this scam out. For every single dollar produced by the central bank is loaned at interest. That means every single dollar produced is actually the dollar plus a certain percent of debt based on that dollar. And since the central bank has the monopoly over the production of the currency for the entire country, and they loan each dollar out with immediate debt attached to it, where does the money to pay for the debt come from? It can only come from the central bank again. Which means the central bank has to perpetually increase its money supply to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which in turn, since that new money is loaned out at interest as well, creates even more debt. The end result of this system without fail is slavery, for it is impossible for the government and thus the public to ever come out of the self-generating debt. The founding fathers of this country were well aware of this.
Now you guys can read this with me. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Care to guess who says this? I'm pretty sure it'd be Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson. This guy's saying this. He died in 1826, guys, and he's saying this in like 1700s, 1800s. Like, yo, wake up. You want to talk about Madonna's little wake up video? This is a wake up call. If you want to remain slaves of the bankers and pay for the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and control the nation's credit.
By the early
I don't know
20th
who that
century,
is.
the U.S. had already implemented and removed a few central banking systems, which were swindled into place by ruthless banking interests. At this time, the dominant families in the banking and business world were the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds. And in the early 1900s, they sought to push once again legislation to create another central bank. However, they knew the government and public were very weary of such an institution, so they needed to create an incident to affect public opinion. So, J.P. Morgan, publicly considered a financial luminary at the time, exploited his mass influence by publishing rumors that a prominent bank in New York was insolvent or bankrupt. Morgan knew this would cause mass hysteria, which would affect other banks as well. And it did. The public, in fear of losing their deposits, immediately began mass withdrawals. Consequently, the banks were forced to call in their loans, causing the recipients to sell their property, and thus a spiral of bankruptcies, repossessions, and turmoil emerged. Putting the pieces together a few years later, Frederick Allen of Life magazine wrote, "The Morgan interests took advantage to precipitate the panic, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed." Unaware of the fraud, the panic of 1907 led to a congressional investigation.
So you guys see how that works? How that works is people put money into banks. Okay, and I'm pretty sure they'll go through this. I'll just try to sum it up real quick, so just in case you didn't really understand that. You give money to a bank. You put your money in a bank, right? They can take that $100 and they can give out loans. I'm trying to think here. They can give out a $100 loan. So the rule is in a bank, they can have 10% of what they loan out. So they can take that $100 and give out $100 loans to 10 different people. Since they have $100 in stock, they can give out $1,000 worth of loans. Okay, that's just $100, guys. We can talk thousands, millions, billions. Like, the number is insane. If you put all the banks together, the number is insane. For how much money they have in stock and what they loan out is insane. So what happened is this big banker basically put out a rumor saying banks are running out of money, they're about to collapse. So what do you do if your bank is about to collapse? You go pull your money out. So now all the money that's holding everything up in this bank is now getting pulled out like crazy. So what the banks have to do is they have to call the people that gave the loans in and call in the loans. This can happen with your loan on the house. If anything like a collapse happened, they can call in the loans. They can call in, hey, we paid you this much, we need it back. And if you don't have the money to do it, boom, foreclosure, boom, businesses went out, boom, this is the collapse and the depression right there. So they caused this. The Rockefellers sacrifice people's lives because they don't give a shit about people. To be honest, they care about money. They don't care about armies. They care about money. They want the control of the money. So that's what that is.
Headed by Senator Nelson Aldrich, who had intimate ties to the banking cartels and later became part of the Rockefeller family through marriage. The commission, led by Aldrich, recommended a central bank should be implemented so a panic like 1907 could never happen again. This was the spark the international bankers needed to initiate their plan. In 1910, a secret meeting was held at a J.P. Morgan estate on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. It was there that the central banking bill called the Federal Reserve Act was written. This legislation was written by bankers, not lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public knowledge, that the 10 or so figures who attended were told they could only use their first names in addressing each other. After this bill was constructed, it was then handed over to their political frontman, Senator Nelson Aldrich, to push through Congress. And in 1913, with heavy political sponsorship by the bankers, Woodrow Wilson became president, having already agreed to sign the Federal Reserve Act in exchange for campaign support. And 2 days before Christmas, when most of Congress was at home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was voted in, and Wilson in turn made it law. Years later,
all right, let's hear what he says about it.
Later, Woodrow Wilson wrote, in regret,
I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men.
Congressman Louis McFadden also expressed the truth after the passage of the bill. A world banking system was being set up here, a superstate controlled by international bankers, acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. The Fed has usurped the government. Now, the public was told that the Federal Reserve System was an economic stabilizer, and inflation and economic crises were a thing of the past. Well, as history has shown...
I told you this shit's gonna get deep, guys. Like, here's the problem I have. It's a lot of people that I know are surface complainers. They're on the surface and they only tackle these little tiny issues, right? You can see this in relationships. People that have relationship arguments, what they're doing is they're arguing about these little nonsense things when they're not attacking the problem. They're not actually going to the problem of what the real issue is. I'm going to take you deeper than deep. And it even goes deeper, but I'm not going to take you that deep because I don't think that most people are ready. Probably most people that are watching this already know a lot of this shit. So hopefully there's some new people in here that really realize what the problem is. Because the only way you're going to promote change is when enough people know about this. This is a huge problem, guys. This is when people talk about presidents being the puppets. These guys own the media. They own the media, guys. They'll direct you to believe anything. They did it with the Depression, with the banks. They put out rumors. They put out rumors that the banks were going to collapse, and look what happened. Many people died. Many people starved. It was horrible.
Nothing is further from the truth. The fact is, the international bankers now had a streamlined machine to expand their personal ambitions.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
For example, from 1914 to 1919, the Fed increased the money supply by nearly 100%, resulting in extensive loans to small banks and the public. Then, in 1920, the Fed called in mass percentages of the outstanding money supply, thus resulting in the supporting banks having to call in huge numbers of loans, and, just like 1907, bank runs, bankruptcy, and collapse occurred. Over 5,400 competitive banks outside of the Federal Reserve System collapsed, further consolidating the monopoly of a small group of...
Okay. So here's the thing. It said 54 competitive banks went bankrupt, right? Watch what happens.
Privy to this crime, Congressman Lindbergh stepped up and said in 1921, under the Federal Reserve Act, panics are scientifically created. The present panic is the first scientifically created one, worked out as we figure a mathematical equation. However, the panic of 1920 was just a warm-up. From 1921 to 1929, the Fed again increased the money supply, resulting once again in extensive loans to the public and banks. There was also a fairly new type of loan called a margin loan in the stock market. Very simply, the margin loan allowed an investor to put down only 10% of a stock's price, with the other 90% being loaned through the broker. In other words, a person could own $1,000 worth of stock with only $100 down. This method was very popular in the roaring 1920s, as everyone seemed to be making money in the market. However, there was a catch to this loan. It could be called in at any time and had to be paid within 24 hours. This is termed a margin call, and the typical result of a margin call is the selling of the stock purchased with the loan. So, a few months before October in 1929, J.D. Rockefeller, Bernard Baruch, and other insiders quietly exited the market. And on October 24th, 1929, the New York financiers who furnished the margin loans started calling them in masse. This sparked an instantaneous, massive sell-off in the market, for everyone had to cover the margin loans. It then triggered mass bank runs for the same reason, in turn collapsing over 16,000 banks, enabling the conspiring international bankers to not only buy up rival banks at a discount, but to also buy up whole corporations at pennies on the dollar. It was the greatest robbery in American history.
I'm recording.
But that didn't stop there. Rather than expanding the money supply in order to recover from this economic collapse, the Fed actually contracted it, fueling one of the largest depressions in history.
They bought up banks, pennies on the dollar, whole corporations. So they caused this collapse to collapse banks, their competition, and buy them up. Like, you guys, you want to talk about corruption?
Once again outraged, Congressman Louis McFadden, a longtime opponent of the banking cartels, began bringing impeachment proceedings against the Federal Reserve Board, saying of the crash and depression, it was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so that they might emerge the rulers of us all. Not surprisingly, and after 2 previous assassination attempts, McFadden was poisoned at a banquet before he could push for the impeachment. Now, having reduced the society to squalor, the Federal Reserve bankers decided that the gold standard should be removed. In order to do this, they needed to acquire the remaining gold in the system. So, under the pretense of helping to end the Depression, came the 1933 gold seizure.
They seize the people's gold, people. Like, this is the biggest theft. I don't think anyone really knows a lot of this. Like, it's scary. And you're worried about... I mean, I'm worried about homeless and immigration, all that stuff too. Trust me. You want to fix shit.
Under the threat of imprisonment for 10 years, everyone in America was required to turn in all gold bullion to the Treasury, essentially robbing the public of what little wealth they had left.
They just literally created their slaves right there.
The gold standard was abolished. If you look at a dollar bill from before 1933, it says it is redeemable in gold.
Not no more.
If you look at a dollar bill today, it says it is legal tender, which means it is backed by absolutely nothing. It is worthless paper. The only
It's
thing
a
that gives our
fucking
money
game,
value
people.
is how much of it is in circulation. Therefore, the power to regulate the money supply is also the power to regulate its value, which is also the power to bring entire economies and societies to its knees.
Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. This is what happened. The forefathers knew this. They warned us. You saw it in the beginning. Do not let a private bank take over your government's money. Don't let them do it. They were doing it the right way back then. Interest-free loans, small banks. But what did we do? We're too trusting. When someone comes in and says they're going to help you out, we're going to promise you this, we're going to promise you that, we're going to give you free shit. Don't fall for it. Like, fuck's sake, man. History repeats itself for a reason. It repeats itself for the people to wake up and learn what not to do. Like, quit giving people this kind of control. The control is that they'll take everything from you. What they'll do is they'll take everything from you and then give you just enough to survive. They'll make you so dependent on them that you have to give them what you make. That's what you see today. Guess which banker says this? All right, we got a couple seconds. It's going to about... Oh, the Rothschilds Foundation. Of Rothschilds Banking Dynasty.
Understand, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It is about as Federal Express. It makes its own policies and is under virtually no regulation by the U.S. government. It is a private bank that loans all the currency at interest to the government, completely consistent with the fraudulent central banking model that the country sought to escape from when it declared independence in the American Revolutionary War. Now, going back to 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was not the only unconstitutional bill pushed through Congress. They also pushed the federal income tax. It's worthwhile to point out that the American public's ignorance towards the federal income tax is a testament to how dumbed down and oblivious the American population really is. First of all, the federal income tax is completely unconstitutional, as it is a direct, unapportioned tax. All direct taxes have to be apportioned to be legal based on the Constitution. Secondly, the required number of states in order to ratify the amendment to allow the income tax was never met, and this has even been cited in modern court cases. Third, at the present day, roughly 35% of the average worker's income is taken from them via this tax. That means you work 4 months out of the year to fulfill this tax obligation. And guess where that money goes? It goes to pay the interest on the currency being produced by the fraudulent Federal Reserve Bank, a system that does not have to exist at all.
And Bernie Sanders wants more taxes. He wants to tax people up to 75%. He admitted just in the camp or in the debates, he will tax the middle class. He will raise taxes on the middle class. For it to go to this, but they're promising you, right? We're gonna save you. There's a threat out there. Doesn't matter if it's true or not, guys. They're rolling with it. There's a threat out there, climate change. We need to save the world. You have 12 years 12 years and the world will end. We can never turn back. After 12 years, we have to figure it out. You guys, it's all a fucking pony show. If you can't, dude, like, you have people that run our country, run our financial system. Like, come on.
1 cent of this tax goes towards any governmental program whatsoever. Not 1 cent. The money you make working 4 months out of the year goes almost literally into the pockets of the international bankers who own the private Federal Reserve Bank. And fourth, even with the fraudulent government claim as to the legality of the income tax, there is literally no statute, no law in existence that requires you to pay this tax. Period.
I really expect.
I've posted that video, guys. There's going to be IRS agents talking about this. There is no law that states you have to pay the federal income tax. But then we have this mob, these Al Capones, that if you don't pay them, they send the IRS, they send a police force, they arrest you, they take your assets, they sell your shit to get that money. If you guys want to talk about theft and slavery, like, you are just embarking on a whole nother realm of understanding of what our system truly is. Not what it was meant to be. This is why I'm a constitutionalist, because the forefathers created a system that was so good for the people, that would have brought so many people out of poverty, and honestly, would have helped out these third world countries to fix their problems and build them up. The forefathers knew what the fuck they were doing. The people were dumb. People allowed it. There's enough people now, you guys. Information can spread, and then things can go viral within a matter of seconds. Information can be spread. It's just if people are willing to listen. That's the problem.
That of course there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code, that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know, and I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
Based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000, and then I'm still doing it. I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS,
This girl's
the
famous
IRS
for this.
commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
I haven't filed an federal income tax return since I left.
I have not filed a tax return since 1999.
The income tax is nothing less than the enslavement of the entire country. Now, the control of the economy and the perpetual robbery of wealth is only one side of the Rubik's Cube that bankers hold in their hands. The next tool for profit and control is war. Since the inception of the Federal Reserve in 1913, a number of large and small wars have commenced. The three most
gonna get
pronounced
crazy.
were World War I,
It's
World
gonna
War
get
II,
crazy,
and
guys.
Vietnam. World War I. In 1914, European wars broke out centered around England and Germany. The American public wanted nothing to do with the war. In turn, President Woodrow Wilson publicly declared neutrality. However, under the surface, the U.S. administration was looking for any excuse it could find to enter.
Ooh, they were
Woodrow
dying to
Wilson's
get in
top
there.
advisor and mentor was Colonel Edward House, a man with intimate connections with the international bankers who wanted in the war. In a noted observation by Secretary of State William Jennings, the large banking interests were deeply interested in the World War because of the wide opportunities for large profits. It's important to understand that the most lucrative thing that can happen for the international bankers is war, for it forces the country to borrow even more money from the Federal Reserve Bank at interest. In a documented conversation between Colonel House, Wilson's advisor, and Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary of England, regarding how to get America into the war, Grey inquired, "What will Americans do if Germans sink an ocean liner with American passengers on board?" House responded, "I believe that a flame of indignation would sweep the United States, and that by itself would be sufficient to carry us into war." So, on May 7,
Jesus.
1915, on essentially the suggestion of Sir Edward Grey, a ship called the Lusitania was deliberately sent into German-controlled waters, where German military vessels were known to be. And, as expected, German U-boats torpedoed the ship, exploding stored ammunition, sinking it in 18 minutes, killing 1,200 people. To further understand the deliberate nature of this setup, the German embassy actually put advertisements in the New York Times telling people that if they boarded the Lusitania, they did so at their own risk, as such a ship sailing from America to England through the war zone would be liable to destruction. In turn, and as anticipated, the sinking of the Lusitania caused a wave of anger among the American population, and America entered the war a short time after. The First World War caused 323,000 American deaths. J.D. Rockefeller made $200 million off of it. That's about $1.9 trillion by today's standards. Not to mention the war cost about $30 billion for America, most of which was borrowed from the Federal Reserve Bank at interest, furthering the profits of the international banks.
Trillions,
World War
dog.
II. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, triggering our entry into that war. President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared the attack was a day that will live in infamy. A day of infamy indeed, but not because of the alleged surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. After 60 years of surfacing information, it is clear that not only was the attack on Pearl Harbor known weeks in advance, it was outright wanted and provoked.
You guys, I'm just saying, man.
Roosevelt, whose family had been New York bankers since the 18th century, whose uncle Frederick was on the original Federal Reserve Board, was very sympathetic to the interests of the international bankers, and the interest was to enter the war, as we've seen, nothing is more profitable for international bankers than war. In a journal entry by Roosevelt's Secretary of War Henry Stimson, dated November 25, 1941, he documented a conversation he had with Roosevelt. The question was, how should we maneuver them into firing the first shot? It was desirable to make sure the Japanese be the ones to do this, so that there should remain no doubt as to who were the aggressors. In the months leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt had done almost everything in his power to anger the Japanese, showing a posture of aggression. He halted all of Japan's imports of American petroleum. He froze all the Japanese assets in the United States. He made public loans to nationalist China and supplied military aid to the British, both enemies of Japan in the war.
So sanctions, what you see Trump that was doing with Iran, like this is where I'm pretty scared. I don't think they're going to do anything. But the whole thing with the whole drone, like supposedly the drone was in their land. I don't know. But this is what I'm scared of, because when you start doing sanctions, these other countries could take it as an act of war. Like if you try to punish them, but cutting off trade and fuel from Japan was major to their economy. Like you basically just ruined their country by doing that. Just those couple things. That's what happens.
Which, by the way, is completely in violation of international war rules. And on December 4th, 3 days before the attack, Australian intelligence told Roosevelt about a Japanese task force moving towards Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt ignored it. So, as hoped and allowed, on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, killing 2,400 soldiers. Before Pearl Harbor, 83% of the American public wanted nothing to do with the war. After Pearl Harbor, 1 million men volunteered for the war. It is important to note, Nazi Germany's war effort was largely supported by two organizations, one of which was called IG Farben. IG Farben produced 84% of Germany's explosives, and even the Zyklon B used in the concentration camps to kill millions. One of the unspoken partners of IG Farben was J.D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company in America. In fact, the German Air Force could not operate without a special additive patented by Rockefeller's Standard Oil. The drastic bombing of London by Nazi Germany, for example, was made possible by a $20 million sale of fuel to IG Farben by the Rockefeller Standard Oil Company. This is just one small point on the topic of how American business funded both sides of World War II. One other treasonous organization worth mentioning is the Union Banking Corporation of New York City. Not only did it finance numerous aspects of Hitler's rise to power, along with actual materials during the war, it was also a Nazi money laundering bank, which was eventually exposed for having millions of dollars of Nazi money in its vaults. The Union Banking Corporation of New York was eventually seized for violations of the Trading with the Enemy Act. Guess who the director and vice president of the Union Bank was? Prescott Bush, our current president's grandfather, and of course our former president's father. Keep that in mind when considering the moral and political dispositions of the Bush family. Vietnam. The United States' official declaration of war on North Vietnam in 1964 came after an alleged incident involving 2 U.S. destroyers being attacked by North Vietnamese PT boats in the Gulf of Tonkin. This was known as the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This single situation was the catalytic pretext for massive troop deployment and full-fledged warfare. One problem, however, the attack on the U.S. destroyers by Vietnamese PT boats
never happened.
It was a completely staged event to have an excuse to enter the war. Former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara stated years later that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a mistake, while many other insiders and officers have come forward, relaying that it was a contrived farce, a complete lie. Once in the war, it was business as usual. In October 1966, President Lyndon Johnson lifted trading restrictions on the Soviet bloc, knowing full well that the Soviets were providing upwards of 80% of North Vietnam's war supplies. Consequently, Rockefeller interests financed factories in the Soviet Union, which the Soviets used to manufacture military equipment and send it to North Vietnam. However, the funding of both sides of this conflict was only one side of the coin. In 1985, Vietnam's rules of engagement were declassified. This detailed what American troops were and were not allowed to do in the war. It included absurdities like North Vietnamese anti-aircraft missile systems could not be bombed until they were known to be fully operational. No enemy could be pursued once they crossed the border of Laos or Cambodia. And most revealing of all, the most critical strategic targets were not allowed to be attacked unless initiated by high military officials. Apart from these imposed ludicrous limitations, North Vietnam was informed of these restrictions and therefore could base entire strategies around the limitations of the American forces. This is why the war went on so long. And the bottom line is this: the Vietnam War was never meant to be won, just sustained. This war for profit resulted in 58,000 American deaths and 3 million dead Vietnamese.
No wonder people hate America. These fucking bankers, man, just fuck everything up.
So, where are we now? September 11th was the jumpstart for what is now an accelerated agenda by the ruthless elite. It was a staged war pretext no different than the sinking of the Lusitania, the provoking of Pearl Harbor, and the Gulf of Tonkin lie. In fact, if 9/11 wasn't a planned war pretext, it would be an exception to the rule. It has been used to launch 2 unprovoked illegal wars, one against Iraq and one against Afghanistan. However, 9/11 was a pretext for another war as well, the war against you. The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, the Military Tribunals Act, and other legislations are all completely and entirely designed to destroy your civil liberties and limit your ability to fight back against what is coming. Currently in the United States, unannounced to most brainwashed Americans, your home can be searched without a warrant, without you being home. You can in turn be arrested with no charges revealed to you, detained indefinitely with no access to a lawyer, and legally tortured, all under the suspicion that you might be a terrorist. If you need a painted picture of what is happening in this country, let's recognize how history repeats itself. In February 1933, Hitler staged a false flag attack, burning down his own German parliament building, the Reichstag, and blamed it on communist terrorists. In the next few weeks, he passed the Enabling Act, which completely eradicated the German Constitution, destroying people's liberties. He then led a series of preemptive wars, all justified to the German people as necessary to maintaining homeland security.
What? An evil exists that threatens every man, woman, and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland. George W. Bush, right? Right. But the funny thing is, Adolf Hitler said the same thing. Huh. Interesting.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
It's time to wake up. The people in power go out of their way to make sure that you are perpetually misled and manipulated. The majority's perception of reality, especially in the political arena, is not their own. It is shrewdly imposed upon them without them even knowing it. For example, the public at large actually believes the invasion of Iraq is going badly, as sectarian violence doesn't seem to stop. What the public fails to see is that the destabilization of Iraq is exactly what the people behind the government want. This war is to be sustained so the region can be divided up, domination of the oil maintained, continual profits reaped for the defense contractors, and most importantly, permanent military bases established to be used as a launching pad against other oil-bearing, non-conforming countries such as Iran and Syria. For further implication that the civil war and destabilization is purely intentional, in 2005, 2 elite British SAS officers were arrested by Iraqi police after being caught driving around in their car shooting at civilians while dressed up as Arabs. After being arrested and taken to a jail in Basra, the British Army immediately requested the release of these men. When the Basra government refused, British tanks came in and physically broke out the men from the Basra prison.
If you wish to destroy an area, how do you do it? Well, there are 2 ways. You can go in there and bomb it and so forth, but that is not very efficient.
No.
What you do is you try to get the people in that area to kill each other.
Yeah.
And to destroy their own territory.
So it's happening right now in America.
Their own farms. And that's what's been done in that area. The way in which you destroy an opponent is get him to destroy himself by dividing his ranks against one another. Then you feed both sides. You have agents feeding both sides, inflaming both sides, and they kill each other off. And it's time that some of us woke up to this reality, to understand that people who try to maintain empires and create empires do it by manipulating the people they're trying to conquer.
I'm telling you guys, this is like, a lot of people are all about like, oh, conspiracy. You guys, just wake the fuck up. They've been doing this forever. Like, it's not a conspiracy. I mean, there's conspiracies out there, don't get me wrong, but dude, like,
You might want to ask yourself why the entire culture is utterly saturated with mass media entertainment from all sides, while the educational system in America continues its stupefying downward slide since the U.S. government decided to take over and subsidize the public school system.
What your government pays for, it gets. When we understand that, then we look at government-financed institutions of education and see the kind of students and the kind of education that's being turned out by these government-financed schools. Logic will tell you that if what is being turned out in those schools was not in accord with what the state and the federal government wanted, then it would change it. The bottom line is that the government is getting what they have ordered. They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much. That is why our country and our world has become so proliferated with entertainments, mass media, television shows, amusement parks, drugs, alcohol, and every kind of entertainment to keep the human mind entertained, so that you don't get in the way of important people by doing too much thinking. You had better wake up and understand that there are people who are guiding your life and you don't even know it.
We're in a lot of trouble.
Straight up, people.
Because you
That's called crazy for
people
talking like
and
this.
62 million other Americans are listening to me right now. Because less than 3% of you people read books. Because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel, the ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents.
I like how they only post Fox News. They should have done all of
This
them.
tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people. And when the largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network. So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth.
Television's a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.
That's some deep shit, dude.
So the last thing the men
There we
behind
go.
the curtain
All the
want
media,
is a
ABC,
conscious,
CNN,
informed public,
NBC,
capable
Fox
of critical
News.
thinking, which is why a continually
I don't watch
fraudulent
video, guys.
zeitgeist is output via religion, the mass media, and the educational system. They seek to keep you in a distracted, naive bubble, and they are doing a damn good job of it. In 2005, an
This is
arrangement
fucking
between
crazy.
Canada, Mexico, and the United
This is
States
crazy,
was
people.
made.
Listen to
This
this.
arrangement, unannounced to the public, unregulated by Congress, merges the United States, Mexico, and Canada into one entity, erasing all borders.
Why do you think they're fighting Trump on a wall, guys? He's literally going against big plans. Like having a nation, guys. This is very important. This is about independence. You're literally pushing for world government that is not... It's crazy. Here you go.
It's called the North American Union. You might want to ask yourself why you've never heard of this. In fact, there is only one mainstream reporter who's actually heard of and has had the courage to cover this issue.
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people, political officials across our country from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
This isn't some trade agreement. It is a total removal of sovereignty from these countries, which will
No
also
declaration,
result in
guys,
a
no
completely new
rights.
currency called the Amero.
The Amero.
Apart from that, I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
By default of this agreement, the American Constitution will eventually be obsolete. You would think that a
You
situation
want rights,
like
people.
this would be on the cover of every major newspaper.
Hell no, it
That is
wouldn't.
until you realize that the people who are behind this movement are the same people behind the mainstream media.
CFR is the Council of Foreign Relations. This is a very interesting group here, guys. And what's sad is that Democratic campaigner Tulsi Gabbard, I think her name is Gabbard, something like that. I actually like some of the shit she says. She's a member of this CFR, guys. Like, I'm telling you, it's gonna get crazy. Just watch.
And you are not told what you're not supposed to know. The North American Union is the same concept as the European Union, the African Union, and the soon-to-be Asian Union, and the same people are behind all of them. And, when the time is right, the North American Union, the European Union, the African Union, and the Asian Union will be merged together, forming the final stages of a plan these men have been working on for over 60 years. A one-world government.
We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent. Council of Foreign Relations, an architect of the Federal Reserve System, in the address to this U.S. Senate in 1950, guys. It's not even that long ago. 70 years ago. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we have been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But now the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable
one bank,
to the national
one
auto
army, one
David
center
Rockefeller.
of power. And if we have learned anything
I'm a
from
slow reader,
history,
guys, sorry.
it is that power corrupts. And
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller.
I'm gonna pause this, guys. The reason why this is crazy is because I've watched this when I was in high school, bro. I'm 29 years old. I'm 29 years old, and I was watching this in high school. Could you imagine me at the parties? Everyone's getting fucking sloshy drunk, and here I am. I smoked weed at that time. I don't anymore. But I'd smoke weed at that time because I wasn't a big drinker. My dad was an alcoholic. Abused my mom, abused me, abused my sister. I didn't like it. You know those people that say, I'm never going to turn out like that man, my father. But then they do. I didn't do that. I don't even drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke weed. So I'd smoke at these parties, and I'd bring this shit up. People literally thought I was crazy, bro. They thought I was crazy. When Bush was president, I was talking about all this corrupt shit going on. Like, yeah. So it's just crazy because I haven't really watched this full thing for a long time. I've watched little pieces. I've seen little pieces circulating on Facebook. But I figured everyone's just... So many people... When I see all these arguments on Facebook, it's like, you guys don't even know. Like, people are trying to lecture me on how things should work or how capitalism is the wrong answer. We need freaking socialism. I'm like, dude, you are crazy because that's what they want. That's what the world government will be, is socialism. You will be an indentured slave. Is that a hair? Sorry, let me get back to this. I gotta jump in here and say some words, you guys. I feel like I'm weird. Like I'm just sitting here on the couch with you guys watching this. So
Aaron
it's almost done, I
ended
promise.
The relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I think there's 10 more minutes is what we got.
I got a call one day from an attorney woman I knew, and she said, would you like to meet one of the Rockefellers? I said, sure, I'd love to. And we became friends, and he began to divulge a lot of things to me. So he said to me one night, he said that there's going to be an event there, and out of that event, you're going to see we're going to go into Afghanistan, so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish a base in the Middle East, and we're going to go into Venezuela and try and get rid of Chavez. And the first two they've accomplished. Chavez they didn't accomplish. And he said you're going to see guys going into caves looking for people that they're never going to find. You know, he was laughing about the fact that you have this war on terror. There's no real enemy. He's talking about how by having this war on terror, you can never win it because it's an eternal war. And so you can always keep taking people's liberties away. And I said, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? He says, but the media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things. You keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know, you created the Federal Reserve in 1913 through lies. You create 9/11, which is another lie. Through 9/11, you're fighting a war on terror, and now all of a sudden you go into Iraq, which was another lie, and now they're going to do Iran. You know, and it's all one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Now, I would say, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power.
Why?
I said, you know, you're hurting people.
Why?
It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and you take care of your family. And then I said to him, what are the ultimate goals here? He said, the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off that chip.
Chips. So now we're going to get into another weird conspiracy, right? Everyone's like, yeah, right, okay, whatever.
And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off that chip.
That's right, microchipped. In 2005, Congress...
So now you'll think like, oh, microchip. now we're getting crazy, guys. Like, come on. They're in your fucking debit card. They're in your debit card already. They're in your phone. You legit have a chip in your card that you carry around everywhere with you. And people are actually putting it inside them.
Under the pretense of...
I've seen posts recently where businesses were doing this to let people in, pay them, do all kinds of weird shit on this chip. You guys, like, it's here. It's not even crazy anymore. Like, seeing the technology we have today. Like, it's not crazy for people. Like, it'd be actually kind of cool if our government wasn't fucked up and we had a chip and we don't even have to do anything. We just walk through things and, like, your house unlocks, your car unlocks, your car starts, or whatever, you know, like the keyless entries for cars, like those Lexuses and shit. You just have the key in the vicinity and it'll unlock the door, and then you just push the button. Imagine if you didn't have to carry that around. It's actually pretty cool. It's a cool technology, but not with the people in control, man. Don't trust them.
Control and the so-called war on terrorism passed the Real ID Act, under which it is projected by May 2008 you will be required to carry around a federal identification card, which includes on it a scannable barcode with your personal information. However, this barcode is only an intermediary step before the card is equipped with a VeriChip RFID tracking module, which will use radio frequencies to track your every move on the planet. If this sounds foreign to you, please note that the RFID tracking chip is already in all new American passports. And the final step is the implanted chip, which many people have already been manipulated into accepting under different pretenses.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers in a brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
After 9/11, I was really concerned with the security of my family.
I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm that would identify me.
In the end, everybody will be locked into a monitored control grid where every single action you perform is documented. And if you get out of line, they can just turn off your chip. At that point in time, every single aspect of society will revolve around interactions with the chips. This is the picture that is painted for the future if you open your eyes to see it. A centralized one-world economy where everyone's moves and everyone's transactions are tracked and monitored, all rights removed. The most incredible aspect of all. These totalitarian elements will not be forced upon the people.
You're going to beg for it.
Demand them. For the social manipulation of society through the generation of fear and division has completely detached humans from their sense of power and reality. A process which has been going on for centuries, if not millennia. Religion, patriotism, race, wealth, class, and every other form of arbitrary, separatist identification and thus conceit has served to create a controlled population, utterly malleable in the hands of the few. Divide and conquer is the motto, and as long as people continue to see themselves as separate from everything else, they lend themselves to being completely enslaved. The men behind the curtain know this, and they also know that if people ever realize the truth of their relationship to nature and the truth of their personal power, the entire manufactured zeitgeist they prey upon will collapse like a house of cards.
I like this. Oh, man.
The whole system that we live in drills into us that we're powerless, that we're weak, that our society is evil, that it's private, etc., and so forth. It's all a big, fat lie. We are powerful, beautiful, extraordinary. There is no reason why we cannot understand who we truly are, where we are going. There is no reason why the average individual cannot be fully empowered. We are incredibly powerful beings.
You know, I think I spent 30 years of my life, the first 30, trying to become something. I wanted to become good at things. I wanted to become good at tennis. I wanted to become good at school and grades and everything I kind of viewed in that perspective. I'm not okay the way I am, but if I got good at things, you realize that I had the game wrong. The game was to find out what I already was. Find out what I already was.
I like closing my eyes. because you get to take away some senses, which is really basically your sight. It helps you focus more. Woo. Whoa, this is a long video,
now,
guys.
In our culture, we've been trained for individual differences to stand out. So you look at each person, immediately it is brighter, dumber, older, younger, richer, poorer, and we make all these dimensional distinctions, put them in categories, and treat them that way. And we get so that we only see others as separate from ourselves in the ways in which they're separate.
We are all the same.
One of the dramatic characteristics of experience is being with another person and suddenly seeing the ways in which they are like you, not different from you.
Reflection.
And experiencing the fact that which is essence in you and which is essence in me is indeed one. The understanding that there is no other. It is all one.
Oneness. The giant eyeball.
And I wasn't born Richard Albert. I was just born as a human being. And then I learned this whole business of who I am and whether I'm good or bad or achieving or not. All that's learned along the way.
The old appeals to racial, sexual, religious chauvinism, to rabid nationalist fervor are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed.
Bill Hicks used to finish his shows with this. Life's like a ride in an amusement park. And when you go on it, you think it's real,
because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored.
And it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real,
or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us and they say, hey, don't worry.
Don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. I've got a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up.
Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account.
My family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we'll kill those good guys
and try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok?
But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride, and we can change it anytime we want.
It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job,
no savings of money. Just a choice right now between fear and love.
Bang, guys. Ba-bang. Look, I wouldn't even bring this to you guys if I didn't give a shit. If I didn't give a shit and I wanted to just take care of myself, I wouldn't share anything with you guys. I'd just say, hey, you know what? Think what you want, go figure it out yourself. There's a point of that. I'm gonna guide you. I'm gonna guide you to the dish of a water source that is so pure of truth that if you take it and you drink it, it'll cleanse you in a way you will never believe. And I mean that. I mean that honestly. Everyone wants to fight. Everyone wants to bicker. Everyone wants to prove that their side is right. Everyone wants to say my immigration ideas is right and you're bad. You're evil. You're immoral. You don't understand. You're not compassionate. I hear this all the time. We have more problems than people can even believe right now. And I'm okay with some people being passionate about one thing. That's fine. I'm concerned about all of them. And I know that if we weren't in a position where we were constantly in debt and we're slaves. We are slaves, guys. Like, to be honest, everyone that's talking about freedom and best country in the world, like, you guys, right now where we are, sorry for my language, we're kind of fucked. Because of businesses like this, we are fucked. The forefathers told us not to let this happen, and look what's happened. Our nation is crumbling. We used to be a great nation. That's why I hate it when people are like, "What does make America great again even mean, right? Freaking slaves." What do you mean? We're all fucking slaves. A great America is a place where there is true freedom. Simple. Done. That's it. That's it. True freedom, guys. You guys don't even know what true freedom is. I don't even know what true freedom is, but I know what the potential of true freedom is. This ain't it. This ain't it, guys. So if you want to attack the problem, attack the problem. You guys are attacking symptoms. You're just like a doctor. If I have stomach pains, I go to the doctor. They give me a pill for stomach pains. But what's causing the stomach pains? I want the stomach pains to stop. I don't want you to give me a pill. But then I take that pill, right? All of a sudden I got diarrhea. So now I need to go get some diarrhea pills. And then I get a symptom from that. And I get a rash on my arm. So I need some steroid cream to put on there. And then all of a sudden I got tumors in my body. And I go to the doctors. Doctors say we need to pull it out. Pull it out. Well, the body creates more tumors and spreads it all throughout the body. And then I die. That's what I see these arguments. They're just a road to death. I'll have the debates. I'll have the things where we could actually work on those things. But if you really want to attack the problem, this right here, guys, the Federal Reserve, this needs to go. The IRS needs to go too. Federal Reserve and the IRS they're a mob. They don't answer to governments, guys. They do their own thing. No government can regulate them. That's a problem. Anyway, you guys have a good one. I am done. This is like, what, 6 o'clock in the afternoon? I got to go do something. You guys have a good one. Stay tuned. I'll post some more stuff. There's some more stuff on this too, man. I could show you guys the world. You guys have a good one. Don't be in fear, though. Just, usually, when I first got woken up to this, I was scared. I was in fear. And that's something you have to experience. But you need to come past that. And you need to understand that this is preparation. Like, you need to understand things. So that way, when you view these problems in the world, you see them for what they are, and you truly understand what's causing them. Simple as that. So anyway, you guys have a good one. No fear, guys. No fear. Adios.